took place at inappropriate locations without proper environmental safeguards. When you're taking an old plane apart, some waste materials might come out of the structure, and these were not always properly handled.
Most aircraft parts coming from a plane in good condition can be recycled. Just as with construction of new aircraft, the parts have to be top quality. It's in these vast airport hangars, which are also used for aircraft maintenance, that phase 1 of the dismantling operation takes place.
We test some of the parts before dismantling them, and if they're okay, we can recertify them straight away. Others have to be inspected and repaired before being sent to a specialized workshop where they can be recertified. We're also looking for traceability of the parts. That means making sure they're not substandard replacements before putting them back on the market. Spare parts sales manager Carl Rickard takes us on a guided tour of his Alibaba's cave of treasures. 1,700 different parts of a recently dismantled Airbus 310 can be found on the shelves. From cabin windows to aircraft engines, all the parts will find a buyer somewhere in the world.
The crew seats, external windows from the aircraft. This is the overhead PSU for calling the air hostess, etc. These are called sidewall panelings. These are cockpit windows. Okay, this unit here is the flight data recorder. From our aircraft, at the end there will be zero. And there will be zero effect to the environment as well, because we will recycle and recuperate every single piece of the aircraft. But this is the program we want to initiate, because there are people that will, for example, go to the aircraft, take the valuable pieces, and then just leave it.
On the other side of the airfield, this is where the demolition work happens. Martin Aero Recycling is specialized in the dismantling and handling of the fuselage and wings. Delicate and potentially dangerous materials such as pressurized oxygen, asbestos and depleted uranium can be found in the wings of certain models. They have to be removed. An aircraft also contains various fluids which can be very hazardous to the environment.
Our job here is to remove all contaminating materials from the aircraft, including disposal of fluids. Because of the risk of the fluids being absorbed into the ground, we have to create an impermeable barrier between the hazardous materials and the ground. It involves putting down a completely chemical-proof screed onto the floor. The membrane is a fail-safe mechanism in case the cement gets perforated in any way. So even if the cement cracks, the plastic membrane will prevent the fluids from getting to the subsoil.
Ce film plastique en dessous.
All that will be left is the fuselage. Today they're attacking an A310. About 100 aircraft have been dismantled in this environmentally sustainable way since 2005. The major aircraft manufacturers have calculated that over the next dozen years, 10,000 civil aircraft will be coming to the end of their useful lives.
Following the cutting up and reduction of the aircraft, this is what we get. This is all that's left of the plane. These pieces will be loaded into our trucks and taken to the crushing plant about 50 kilometers away.
From the dismantling phase to the and fuselage, 95% of the plane can be recycled.
Here we have the body of an aircraft that's been melted down in a metal reclamation foundry. It's been transformed into these ingots, which can be sold as aluminium raw material for industries. For example, for manufacture of bicycles or for making soft drink cans, which can be found in supermarkets.
An international association was established last year by the companies involved in this emerging industry, the Aircraft Fleet Recycling Association. A more sustainable future for the world's aircraft industry is getting off the ground.
Terra Viva was brought to you by Veolia Environnement. This is Euronews, with the news on the hour.
For the first time in 3 months, Cuban television has shown new images of the country's ailing president, Fidel Castro. The footage was taken last Monday and shows the 80-year-old meeting his counterpart and supporter, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Castro appeared to be in better health, but still somewhat fragile. He was last seen in footage dating from October, where he seemed to be very weak and walking with difficulty. Castro handed power to his brother Raul exactly 6 months ago, following surgery for stomach problems. He's not been seen in public since then, and the exact nature of his illness and state of his health are treated as state secrets. During the course of their 2-hour meeting, Castro is seen joking with Chavez. As I've said, he says this is far from being a lost battle.
There's confirmation that new elections for a regional assembly in Northern Ireland will be held on March the 7th. This from the British and Irish leaders after a meeting in London. Prime Minister Tony Blair repeated his optimism that a power-sharing assembly can be formed.
The basis upon which these elections go ahead should be very clear. It is that on the one side there is proper support for the rule of law and for the courts and the criminal justice system and the police, and on the other side a commitment to power sharing by the 26th of March.
A breakthrough came when the nationalist Sinn Féin party, led by Gerry Adams, recently voted to end decades of opposition to the province's police force. Observers say the election sends a clear signal that Blair believes he's on track to meet the March 26 deadline of restoring the assembly, suspended since 2002.
My friend.
Madam Speaker, this statement...
The aim is to allow Protestant Unionists and the mostly Catholic nationalists to share power in the British province.
One of the two men at the centre of a probe by British investigators into the death of former Russian agent Alexander Litvinenko has said they're prepared to cooperate with the detectives. Dmitry Kovtun told Russian media he would consider helping in the investigation if it took place, in his words, within the framework of Russian law. In the same interview, Andrei Lugovoy, who, along with Kovtun, met Litvinenko in London days before he died from poisoning, rejected British press reports that he's a suspect in the case. Both men say they're witnesses and aren't under suspicion. Litvinenko, a fierce critic of the Kremlin, died in hospital in November after being contaminated by a radioactive substance. British police interviewed the two men in Moscow late last year. Russia's Prosecutor General has said the officers want to return to the capital to continue their probe. Meanwhile, it's emerged that Litvinenko's image has appeared on targets used at a private Russian security firm's training center. It had been the venue for a competition for Russian special forces.
British police investigating Cash for Honours allegations have rearrested the top fundraiser for Tony Blair's ruling Labour Party. This time, Lord Levy was held on suspicion of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Released on bail pending further inquiries, he denies any wrongdoing. Lord Levy is also the British Prime Minister's personal envoy to the Middle East. He was first arrested last July as part of a police probe into claims people were nominated for seats in Parliament's upper chamber, the House of Lords, in exchange for party funding. The scandal has been edging ever closer to Tony Blair, who's set to step down later this year. Claims that 5 Bulgarian nurses and a Palestinian doctor were tortured in Libya are to be investigated by authorities in Sofia. A Libyan court sentenced the 6 to death on charges of intentionally infecting hundreds of children with the HIV virus. They maintain their innocence, saying they were forced to confess under torture. Sofia prosecutor Nikolai Kakinov said there was sufficient information to open an inquiry, adding that it would focus on the acts of 11 Libyan officers. The announcement follows reassurances from a son of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi that the medics will not be executed. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi said a solution would be found soon to satisfy families of the infected children and save the 6, whose death sentence in December prompted an international outcry. The nurses' lawyer says they'll be questioned next month in a separate case against them, in which they stand accused of slandering Libyan police. Protesting at plans to raise the retirement age. Thousands of metal workers have taken to the streets of Germany. They're furious at a government bid to change the pension system. It means people would have to work until the age of 67 to get a full state pension. Currently, the German retirement age stands at 65. Demonstrations to denounce the move were held across the country. The biggest rally took place in the southern city of Stuttgart. Unions see the plans as an attack on workers' rights. The government believes reform is vital, faced with an ageing population. The controversial changes still need parliamentary approval. They'd be gradually phased in between 2012 and 2029.
Supporters of fledgling Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa have stormed a session of Congress in the capital, Quito. Among the protesters were some wearing the green shirts of Correa's campaign. Police used tear gas to disperse the crowds who were demanding opposition parties in Congress accept his plan for a vote on constitutional reform. Yes to the popular assembly, they shouted as they were cleared from the streets. Some protesters managed to get inside the building and the debate on reform was eventually suspended. The failure of recent governments to deliver on their promises for Ecuador's largely indigenous population has led to political volatility in the country. Correa's government said it deeply regretted the disturbances after the speaker accused it of supporting the crowds.
Confiamos en el pueblo ecuatoriano.
We think the people of Ecuador will respect the Congress, he says. We can't allow fear to stop our business. We've an obligation to the country and we're going to fulfill it and continue to work. Many blame Ecuador's traditional political parties for the country's chronic instability. But Correa's reforming zeal has also led to fears of turmoil in the country, where 3 elected presidents have been ousted in a decade. 200 years after Greece lost the Elgin marbles, another campaign has been launched to get them back. Hundreds of schoolchildren linked arms around Athens' famous Parthenon to demand their return. The missing sculptures formed part of the 2,500-year-old temple.
I strongly believe that we can make a difference. Of course, there are some people that might be pessimistic, but if we really believe in that cause, I think that we can make a difference.
As well as belonging to the Parthenon, the march organisers say the marbles symbolise the pride and dignity of Greece. 65,000 signatures and 900 letters of protest have been sent here to the British Museum in London. The Elgin marbles were brought here by the eponymous British ambassador at the beginning of the 19th century. The museum says it's unable to give them back.
Economia with Europurchase, the European Business Directory. Buy better, sell more.
Germany is to phase out its heavily subsidized coal mining industry by 2018. That move comes after months of negotiations between the left and right-wing parties in the country's ruling coalition. The socialists had wanted to delay a decision on the closures until 2012. These miners were not happy. For a long time, the politicians have been taking decisions on people they know nothing about. My children are asking me, Papa, what's going to happen now? And I can't give them an answer. The mines are owned by industrial group RAG, which also operates power and gas companies, as well as construction. Economy Minister Michael Gloss said with this plan, there'll be no forced redundancies. And with the loss-making mines due to close, RAG will be able to attract investors when it floats on the stock market. He said this means RAG can be a really powerful industrial group in North Rhine-Westphalia. That should reassure the workers in this sector they're not going to be thrown onto the streets. Germany's last 8 mines in the northwest of the country produced 21 million tonnes of coal last year and employ almost 37,000 people. The federal and regional governments have been paying subsidies of €2.5 billion a year to prop up the industry. Most of Germany's hard coal is over 1,000 metres below ground, and the extra expense of extracting it means it costs over 3 times the industry average. Critics say each miner is costing German taxpayers €75,000 a year in subsidies. European Union finance ministers have formally agreed to end disciplinary measures against France now that its budget deficit is below the 3% of GDP limit set by EU rules. During talks in Brussels, the ministers, including France's Thierry Breton, also discussed the European Central Bank's independence and worries over the weak yen. The Japanese currency has fallen by 10% against the euro in the past year and is down around 20% versus the euro's launch value. The worry is that could hurt Europe's economy through the effects on exports. The Eurozone finance ministers also expressed support for the European Central Bank, following criticism from the 2 main candidates in the French presidential election. Luxembourg Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker, who heads the group of 13 countries using the euro, said they'd made it clear that they would not back any attempt to force the ECB to focus more on economic growth rather than fighting inflation.
A European Union court upheld a €10 million antitrust fine on France Telecom's internet arm Wanadoo, saying the company abused its position to undercut rivals. The EU court fined Wanadoo in 2003 after finding it charged predatory prices that failed to cover its own costs in order to take control of the market. Wanadoo rejected the original ruling, claiming it was not in a monopoly-type position. However, EU regulators said pricing below costs gave grounds to assume that prices were designed to damage its business rivals. France Telecom SA took over Wanadoo in September 2004, buying out the 30% of the enterprise it did not previously own. France has the biggest broadband market in Europe.
US Federal Reserve officials have started their two-day policy meeting, with the markets betting that they will keep interest rates unchanged for now. Ben Bernanke, who's this week marking 1 year as chairman of the Fed, and his colleagues are faced with a strengthening US economy and moderating inflation. European stocks made modest gains. Mining companies rallied after copper prices rebounded. Engineering firm Siemens rose 5% due to a broker upgrade. Alitalia's shares were up 3.5% as 11 possible bidders expressed an interest in buying the Italian government's stake. Air France KLM gained 7% after saying it won't bid.
Economia with Europurchase, the European Business Directory. Buy better, sell more.
Here's the latest from the world's markets.
AC Milan have finally secured the services of Brazilian star Ronaldo for 18 months at a cost of €7.5 million. That fee rises to €8 million if Milan qualify for the Champions League. The three-times World Player of the Year has spent much of the first half of the season on the bench for Real Madrid since the arrival of boss Fabio Capello. He didn't want me, said the striker. As a professional, I want to play. I love football, so I needed to find a solution. It's my last day at Madrid, which is sad. But tomorrow I have a new challenge. That's the way it is. Ronaldo may be sad to leave Madrid, but he will already be familiar with Milan. After a successful season at Barcelona, he moved to Inter Milan in 1997. In a 5-year injury-plagued spell with Inter, he scored 49 times in 68 league matches. The 2002 World Cup made him the biggest star in football, and he became Real Madrid's latest Galactico, or superstar. That transfer set the Spanish giants back more than €30 million. Then at the start of this season, Capello joined Real and set about doing things his way. Under the Italian, Ronaldo started just 3 matches. Younger players began to arrive, and one by one, the Galacticos made their way out of the Bernabeu. Ronaldo may be short of match fitness, but by linking up with Brazilian teammate Kaká, Ronaldo could revive his new employer's season. Milan are currently 9th in Serie A. Liverpool's good recent Premiership form continued with a win at West Ham. Goals from Coit and Crouch. Sheffield United moved 3 points closer to safety, beating Fulham. Wigan and the Hammers are in trouble towards the bottom. Liverpool now just 2 points behind Chelsea in second, 8 behind leaders Man United. Bayern Munich's hopes of defending their Bundesliga title took a blow as they were held to a goalless draw at home by struggling Bochum. 2 goals from Mario Gomez helped Stuttgart to a win that lifts them above Bayern into third. The top 2 now have a game in hand. French third division team Vannes are in the draw for the quarter-finals of the French Cup after beating Montpellier. Paris Saint-Germain's season could yet be saved as their cup run continues. Sochaux and Sedan also go into the hat. Minot's Montceau-les-Mines face Bordeaux and Marseille host Lyon in the match of the round. Spurred on by an enthusiastic home crowd, Germany beat the holders Spain to qualify for the semi-finals of handball's World Championships. They will meet France, who beat Olympic champions Croatia. Poland and Denmark will face each other in the other semi for a place in Sunday's final. The Austrian Benny Reich has won the Men's World Cup slalom ski event in Schladming. The reigning Olympic slalom champion now tops the World Cup table in the discipline and lies third in the overall standings, in which Norway's Axel Lund Svindal leads the way. The Belgian Tom Boonen has won the third stage of cycling's Tour of Qatar, maintaining his position as race leader. The sprint specialist showed his power in the last of the stage's 138 kilometres. Just as on the previous day, the quick-step rider crossed the finish line just ahead of Italy's Alessandro Petacci and Bernhard Eisel of Austria. Boonen now has a 13-second lead over Petacci overall at the halfway stage.
Science and technology now in high-tech. Inside the steel and glass of this shiny new office block on the outskirts of Paris, researchers are building what they hope will become the world's biggest centre for magnetic resonance imaging. MRI scans can help doctors understand how the brain works, allowing them to spot neurological or psychiatric problems and then hopefully treat them. The French scientists working at the Neurospin complex are aiming to push the boundaries of MRI technology. At the moment, most systems work at a level of 1.5 Tesla, the unit used for measuring the intensity of a magnetic field. Neurospin is equipped with machines that work at up to 7 Tesla. The higher resolution images mean that researchers can see the impulses and reactions in the brain and the connections that allow us to function every day. In terms of cerebral pathology, the MRI scans are very useful for diagnosing neurodegenerative diseases, that's to say those diseases that imply a reduction in the density of neurons or their disappearance. So Alzheimer's disease, for example, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease. Each of these diseases is characterized by a reduction in the size of a nerve or a particular area of the brain. MRI scans allow you to quantify these problems very precisely. MRI scans are also starting to be used for studying psychiatric problems, looking for structural anomalies or functional anomalies associated with psychiatric problems like autism and schizophrenia. The MRI technology at Neurospin allows researchers to see the brain in 3 dimensions. It means they can trace the pathways that allow communication between different parts of the brain and better understand the network that allows the cerebral cortex to control movement. So much of the operation of the brain remains a mystery, but these kinds of scans are helping further our knowledge. One of the little revolutions of the new MRI scan equipment is the fact that we can see the cabling of the brain, something we could barely see before. Here you can see in purple the wires that allow the 2 halves of the brain to communicate. And the idea is that there are some illnesses where these connections are missing because they didn't develop properly or they were damaged by a cerebrovascular accident or something like that. Neurospin acts as a contact point between those who are pushing the technical boundaries of research and neuroscientists and neuropsychologists aiming to understand how the brain actually works on an emotional and cognitive level. We can show that there's a very clear link between what someone sees and their brain activity. With this example, you can see the different ways that two people looked at these colored discs. So on this one, the area in blue represents the center of that person's vision center in their brain, and the red, the periphery. The central field of vision activates areas to the right and to the left of the cortex, whereas the peripheral area activates areas deeper inside the folds of the brain.
Alors que les zones périphériques activent des zones plus à l'intérieur, enfouies dans les plissements du cerveau.
The analysis of thought patterns in the brain can tell us a great deal about a person and their way of interpreting the world around them. The process can go both ways. Researchers have been able to tell which object among a certain selection a volunteer is thinking of according to the part of the brain that's activated. Deep inside the Neurospin Center, preparation is underway to build one of the most powerful MRI scanners in the world. It could give the detailed brain scans needed to diagnose illnesses like Alzheimer's as they begin to develop and treat them before it's too late. We already know that there can be physical and chemical anomalies in cells, but we can't really see them with the examinations we do at the moment. What we can see is the damage to the brain, the consequences of these anomalies at a late stage. If we could see these anomalies earlier in a patient with a few symptoms, we could diagnose them with Alzheimer's and eventually start treating them. To do that, you need to have image resolution that's about 10 times better than we have today. And this 11.7 Tesla scanner should help us have that.
Et cet aimant de 11,7 Tesla a en partie pour objectif d'atteindre cette précision.
In this case, size does matter. The greater the magnetic field, the higher the sensitivity, and the higher the spatial or temporal resolution that can be achieved. Global issues blended with traditional themes at the Sundance Film Festival, with the top prize for Best Drama going to Padre Nuestro, a film about an illegal immigrant from Mexico looking for his father in New York City.
¿Qué dices?
Soy Pedro González Martínez. Lupe Martínez era mi madre.
The Best Documentary Award went to Mandabala, a look at crime and corruption in Brazil.
Organized crime has penetrated the very center of power.
The films in competition at the festival in Park City, Utah are made by independent producers and often have anti-establishment themes.
Don't worry about your homework.
Don't worry about our homework.
We can help you with your homework. We can help you, and Dawn and I can help you in the car. Let's do it. Right now. Yeah.
Of course he's serious.
Yeah. Why not? Let's go.
Grace is Gone, about a father whose wife is killed in Iraq, won the Audience Award.
Do you guys want to do it?
Adults!
Another film about Iraq was also honored. No End in Sight is a tough political documentary about US policy mistakes in the war. Director Charles Ferguson was given the Special Jury Prize.
It's a film that I made because I want a very large number of people, the community at large, the population of the United States, to understand what happened in this war and the occupation of Iraq.
While the subject matter of many films was more outward-looking than previous festivals, there remained a focus on the importance of family in troubled times.
Turned as a suspected insurgent.
The raw energy of Liz McComb's live performances are a major draw at summer festivals around Europe. And her new album, Soul, Peace and Love Volume 1, aims to capture that spirit.
We were live in some things, but we were in the studio, so a lot of planning went. For an example, with the Saints, it was a gathering of 3 artists. Not just me, it was my idea, but it was with the producer and with the rapper. And until we come up with something, we created, we cooked in the studio. Can I say that?
McComb comes from Cleveland, Ohio, but has been based in Europe for years. Her version of this New Orleans classic was given a fresh twist with gospel rapper Tony Dorsey.
I'm very moved by the person. It's like meeting someone and they bring you to another level. It's not about trickery at all. And whoever I met in my life has made a better Liz McComb. All the beasts maker, oh, they shall be called the children of God. There's another beast maker, oh, all the children of God. We are the children of God. I think as an artist, we cannot erase the war, we cannot erase anything, but we bring pleasure to people. And during our difficult times, I hope I can speak as a love, a big love, because from my soul, I will always sing and declare peace. And I am a woman of great love. So I hope to give you pleasure in your ears and in your heart.
And if you feel like, kick off your shoes. Hallelujah. If somebody don't feel like dancing, kick them off. In this house, in this house, in this house, in this house.
Liz McComb is touring the US and France in the next few months.
In this house.
This is Euronews, with the news on the half hour.
For the first time in 3 months, Cuban television has shown new images of the country's ailing president, Fidel Castro. The footage was taken last Monday and shows the 80-year-old meeting his counterpart and supporter, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Castro appeared to be in better health, but still somewhat fragile. He was last seen in footage dating from October, where he seemed to be very weak and walking with difficulty. Castro handed power to his brother Raul exactly 6 months ago, following surgery for stomach problems. He's not been seen in public since then, and the exact nature of his illness and state of his health are treated as state secrets. During the course of their 2-hour meeting, Castro is seen joking with Chavez. As I've said, he says this is far from being a lost battle.
There's confirmation that new elections for a regional assembly in Northern Ireland will be held on March the 7th. This from the British and Irish leaders after a meeting in London. Prime Minister Tony Blair repeated his optimism that a power-sharing assembly can be formed.
The basis upon which these elections go ahead should be very clear. It is that on the one side, there is proper support for the rule of law and for the courts and the criminal justice system and the police, and on the other side, a commitment to power sharing by the 26th of March.
A breakthrough came when the nationalist Sinn Féin party, led by Gerry Adams, recently voted to end decades of opposition to the province's police force. Observers say the election sends a clear signal that Blair believes he's on track to meet the March 26 deadline of restoring the assembly, suspended since 2002.
My friend.
Madam Speaker, this statement is...
The aim is to allow Protestant Unionists and the mostly Catholic nationalists to share power in the British province.
One of the two men at the centre of a probe by British investigators into the death of former Russian agent Alexander Litvinenko has said they're prepared to cooperate with the detectives. Dmitry Kovtun told Russian media he would consider helping in the investigation if it took place, in his words, within the framework of Russian law. In the same interview, Andrei Lugovoy, who, along with Kovtun, met Litvinenko in London days before he died from poisoning, rejected British press reports that he's a suspect in the case. Both men say they're witnesses and aren't under suspicion. Litvinenko, a fierce critic of the Kremlin, died in hospital in November after being contaminated by a radioactive substance. British police interviewed the two men in Moscow late last year. Russia's Prosecutor General has said the officers want to return to the capital to continue their probe. Meanwhile, it's emerged that Litvinenko's image has appeared on targets used at a private Russian security firm's training center. It had been the venue for a competition for Russian special forces.
British police investigating Cash for Honours allegations have rearrested the top fundraiser for Tony Blair's ruling Labour Party. This time, Lord Levy was held on suspicion of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Released on bail pending further inquiries, he denies any wrongdoing. Lord Levy is also the British Prime Minister's personal envoy to the Middle East. He was first arrested last July as part of a police probe into claims people were nominated for seats in Parliament's upper chamber, the House of Lords, in exchange for party funding. The scandal has been edging ever closer to Tony Blair, who's set to step down later this year. Claims that 5 Bulgarian nurses and a Palestinian doctor were tortured in Libya are to be investigated by authorities in Sofia. A Libyan court sentenced the 6 to death on charges of intentionally infecting hundreds of children with the HIV virus. They maintain their innocence, saying they were forced to confess under torture. Sofia prosecutor Nikolai Kakinov said there was sufficient information to open an inquiry, adding that it would focus on the acts of 11 Libyan officers. The announcement follows reassurances from a son of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi that the medics will not be executed. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi said a solution would be found soon to satisfy families of the infected children and save the 6, whose death sentence in December prompted an international outcry. The nurses' lawyer says they'll be questioned next month in a separate case against them, in which they stand accused of slandering Libyan police. Protesting at